Most people I meet believe a dangerous blood clot arrives with sirens and flashing lights. Yet the truth is quieter than a church at dawn. It can build while you feel perfectly fine, gathering in the stillness of a long drive, a movie marathon, or a cozy nap, and then tilt a life in a single breath. Before we go one step further, here's a small lifeline I want you to try today so you can keep listening with confidence rather than fear. Stand up if you are able. Plant your feet, lift your heels, and roll your ankles slowly. Then take a few steady sips of water. That tiny routine wakes up the second heart in your calves and thins out the sluggishness that settles in when we sit too long. And it takes less than a minute to do. As a clinician who has spent decades at the bedside, I have learned that after 60, the body's balance between clotting and free-flowing blood becomes easier to tip, not because you did something wrong, but because vessels stiffen a little, platelets grab each other a little faster, and long, quiet stretches of sitting invite blood to pool in the lower legs. I used to assume my morning walk bought me a free pass for the rest of the day, until I watched patients who exercised faithfully still run into trouble after hours of stillness. Research in leading hematology journals has shown that the longer we stay seated in one uninterrupted stretch, the higher the risk of clots becomes, even when overall activity looks good, and public health data are very clear that older age itself adds weight to that risk. Here is the part most people miss. The calf muscles act like a gentle pump that presses blood back toward the chest each time they contract. And that pumping works best when we nudge it repeatedly through the day rather than in one heroic burst. A handful of slow heel raises and ankle circles sends a surge of blood through the deep veins behind the knee and washes away the sticky proteins that love a stagnant corner. Pair those small movements with regular sipping, and you help your body keep its volume steady so every squeeze of the calf has something to push. I favor this simple start because it is safe for most people, it fits into real life without special equipment, and it gives you a way to take back a little control in the very minutes when worry would have you sit still and do nothing. I also want to be transparent about the limits, so you do not pin all your hopes on one trick. Movement and hydration are powerful, but they do not replace a conversation with your clinician about medicines, travel plans, recent surgeries, or family history, and they are not a shield against every emergency. You will hear me return to this theme throughout our conversation. We are not waiting for drama. We are staying a step ahead with small, repeatable actions, and we are choosing clarity over panic. If you stay with me, I will show you exactly how to weave these moments of motion into each hour. You are awake, how to avoid the common mistakes that cancel the benefit, and how to recognize the quiet signals your body may already be whispering, so you can act early and keep your independence for years to come. When I tell people that age itself changes the way blood behaves, many look at me in disbelief. But let me explain why I no longer take this lightly. Imagine a garden hose that has been left in the sun for decades. The rubber does not snap overnight, yet little by little it loses its spring. Its lining becomes rough, and water does not glide the way it once did. That is what happens inside our blood vessels after 60. The once smooth walls become less elastic. Tiny scratches appear where proteins and platelets cling like dust in a crack, and the stream of blood can catch in these spots until a clot quietly takes shape. Scientists writing in respected journals on thrombosis have confirmed that with every decade past midlife, platelets become stickier and the endothelial lining more fragile, creating a perfect storm for clotting, even without injury. Here is the danger most people underestimate. You might sit through a 2-hour movie, a long drive to see your grandchildren, or an afternoon lost in a good book, and never feel a single warning sign. Yet in that stillness, blood slows in the veins of the legs, thickening with even mild dehydration, and the very stiffness you blame on aging joints may be the earliest whisper of a clot. I remember a patient who said to me, "Doctor, I only felt a heavy leg, not pain, so I ignored it." Days later, we were rushing her for scans that revealed a clot winding its way upward. That memory reminds me every time I pause too long in my own chair that prevention is not about panic. It is about respecting how the body shifts with time. The advantage of recognizing this is simple. When you accept that age reshapes your circulation, you can step ahead of the risk with movements and hydration that cost nothing but attention. The disadvantage of denial is steep. Dismissing the whispers, waiting for sharp pain or swelling, means the clot is often already well formed. This is why I tell my patients, do not wait for drama. Take the hint from heaviness, from unexplained warmth in one patch of skin, from fog that lingers in your thinking, and move or sip before stillness becomes a trap. Even a handful of ankle circles while seated or a glass of water at your side can shift the balance back towards safety. That is a choice worth making today, not tomorrow. I will never forget the winter when I learned the hard way that feeling fine is not the same as being safe. I had spent a week buried in paperwork, rising only to refill my coffee, and by the 5th day, my legs felt unusually heavy. I brushed it off, telling myself it was nothing more than fatigue from too many late nights. That same week, a woman of 76 walked into my office. She smiled, apologized for wasting my time, and said she only wanted reassurance because of what she thought was a stubborn cramp in her calf. Her story sounded so ordinary that I nearly reassured her on the spot, but something in her face stopped me. We ran a quick scan, and there it was, a clot winding deep in her leg, silent and waiting. The look on her face when she realized how close she had come still stays with me. In that moment, I thought of my own heaviness and how easily I too could have ignored the whisper of trouble. That was my turning point. From that day, I treated prevention not as advice to hand out, but as a daily habit like brushing my teeth. I asked myself, how many others out there dismiss the hints because they expect drama? How many families are blindsided because there was no headline symptom? If you are listening now and remembering a time you told yourself, I am fine, it is nothing, let this be the moment you choose differently. The strength of this story is not in the fear, but in the rescue. A scan saved her before the clot traveled. Awareness saved me before my own stillness became dangerous. The lesson is clear. Waiting for pain is waiting too long. Choosing a sip of water, a stretch of your calves, or even standing during commercials is the small hinge that swings the big door of independence. That choice is in your hands every hour of every day. There is a hidden engine in your body that most people forget until it fails, and I like to call it the second heart. It does not sit in your chest but in the muscles of your calves. Each time those muscles squeeze, they press the veins like a pump, lifting blood against gravity toward the chest and lungs. After 60, this pump matters even more, because the natural elasticity of vessels is reduced and circulation slows down. Without those contractions, blood can pool in the legs, thickening and clumping until the conditions for a clot are quietly met. The beauty of this pump is that it does not require machines or long workouts. It comes alive with the simplest motions. Rising onto your toes while holding a chair for balance, rolling your ankles in a circle, or marching gently in place for less than a minute are enough to send a fresh surge of blood back to the heart. I often tell patients to picture it as squeezing toothpaste from the bottom of the tube. Without that squeeze, paste lingers and hardens, but a gentle roll upward clears it smoothly. The advantage of these movements is that they are safe, free, and accessible to almost everyone, even those who struggle with arthritis or fatigue. They can be done in a waiting room, on an airplane, or while brushing your teeth, and each session keeps circulation refreshed for hours. The disadvantage is that the benefit fades if the practice is done only once or twice a day. Stillness for long stretches erases much of the progress, which is why consistency matters more than intensity. I think of a patient who began with a handful of heel, raises every hour while watching television. Within weeks, she told me she felt lighter on her feet, less foggy in the afternoons, and more confident when walking outdoors. Her story is not unique. It is a reflection of how small, repeatable actions stack up into freedom. If you are listening now, try it with me. Plant your feet on the ground, lift your heels as high as you can, hold for 2 breaths, then lower slowly. Repeat this 20 times if you are able, or even just 5 to begin. Add ankle circles in both directions and, if you feel steady, march gently in place. What you have just done is remind your second heart to keep you safe. It may not feel dramatic, but the quiet habits are the ones that protect independence the longest. What most people do not realize is that dehydration does not arrive with a parched throat. It begins silently, thickening the blood drop by drop until platelets cling together like grains of sugar left in a damp jar. Even mild dehydration, the kind you never notice, makes it harder for your calves to push blood upward and gives clots the environment they need to grow. That is why I tell my patients never to wait until thirst screams. The body is already behind by then. The advantage of steady sipping is that it keeps volume consistent and vessels flexible. So every contraction of your calf muscles has something to work with. The disadvantage of gulping a large glass all at once is that it floods the system quickly and fades just as fast, leaving long stretches when the blood thickens again. I remember a man who told me he only drank water at dinner because he never felt thirsty during the day. When we checked, his blood pressure was erratic, his legs heavy, and his thinking foggy by afternoon. Within weeks of learning to keep a bottle at his side and sip every hour, his energy steadied and the heaviness lifted. Hydration is not the only partner in this story. Food choices influence circulation more than most people imagine. Highly processed meals rich in salt, sugar, and cured meats inflame the vessel walls, narrowing the path for blood and stiffening the very lining meant to stay smooth. The strength of dietary change is that balance does not require perfection. When those same meals are paired with vegetables, fruits, healthy fats like olive oil, and steady fluids, the harmful impact softens considerably. The limitation is that no single food can rescue a poor pattern if unhealthy choices dominate day after day. I once worked with a woman who loved her salty deli sandwiches. Instead of forbidding them, we paired each with a side of fresh greens and a glass of infused water. Her circulation improved without stripping away the comfort of her favorite meal. That is the lesson I want you to hear. It is not about cutting entire food groups or fearing a bite of something you love. It is about weaving hydration and balance into the rhythm of your day, so that blood flows freely and energy returns without struggle. If you are listening now, take a sip of water beside you and think of one meal where you can add color from vegetables or fruit. That small step is the beginning of protecting your vessels for years to come. The earliest signs of a clot are rarely loud. They arrive like a soft knock at the door, a heaviness in one leg, a patch of skin warmer than the rest, a fog that lingers in your thoughts, or words that stumble for a moment and then return. Most people brush these off as aging, fatigue, or clumsiness, and that is the very reason danger grows. I remember a patient who waited 3 days with a swollen calf because she believed it was nothing more than a muscle strain. By the time she sought help, the clot had already traveled, and her recovery was long and painful. That story is why I plead with you not to wait for swelling or sharp pain. Those are late alarms. The advantage of acting on small whispers is that it allows intervention while the problem is still manageable. The disadvantage of denial is that minutes can turn a reversible condition into a life-altering event. Prevention is not just movement and hydration, it is also awareness. When you feel something that does not fit, do not argue with yourself. Do not wait to see if it passes. Take it seriously and speak with a professional. Here is where the story turns hopeful. The habits we have explored together are not grand overhauls. They are sips of water, ankle circles, stretches during commercials, and mindful meals. They are the kind of choices that become as natural as breathing once you tie them to daily routines. Stand during a phone call, sip water before each meal, roll your ankles while the kettle boils. These are not chores. They are small acts of self-respect. And here is the message I want you to carry. Move every hour, drink every hour, and you give yourself years of freedom. Do not underestimate the power of prevention, because it is the quiet guardrail that keeps your independence steady. If you are listening now, I invite you to share one small habit you plan to start today. Your story may be the reminder someone else needs tomorrow, and together we create a community that chooses action over waiting.